amazing, amazing. Easter here at Bodhi, like many spiritual establishments around the world, turn to the story of this master teacher named Jesus, the story of his crucifixion to resurrection. We turn to this story as a guide for our own lives, for our own becoming, for our own awakening. We turn to this story and we look at it in a metaphysical way. Metaphysical meaning beyond the physical understanding. We here at Bodhi do not have the conversation of did it happen or didn't it happen? Did he say this or didn't he say that? We look at this story as a myth, as a sacred text that we can turn to glean out of it the wisdom, the miracles, and the guidance that we are seeking for our own personal lives, so that we are committed to taking a story that is over 2,000 years ago, bringing it to life, rebirthing it, and renewing it within our own soul. That is the point and purpose of this story here. So I begin with, who is Jesus? Who is Jesus to me is an illumined illuminator. He is a mirror. And he walked on this earth as a crystal clear mirror, showing every person that he came to, not their brokenness, their divinity, their wholeness, their power, their presence, their oneness with God. And he was able to do this so clearly. His consciousness was so clear that anything that appeared before him other than the truth and the glory of God melted away, disappeared, was healed, was raised up effortlessly. Not by his doing, by the consciousness and the vessel that he was, by the surrendering over and over and over to the greatness and the glory of God. He is a teacher. He is a way shower. He is a messenger. And so many on the planet have confused the message with the messenger. Let me give you an analogy of how that occurs. Imagine that you walk into a restaurant. I've given this analogy before, but it's really good. Imagine you walk into a restaurant and you've been dying to go to this restaurant. You've heard about it and the food is just amazing. It's off the hook and you're so excited to go there and you sit down and you open the menu and you see this beautiful, described a salmon, a filet, a pasta, whatever your heart desires. But on the menu is something it makes your mouth water just to read it. And so you order the dish that you've been longing to have, and instead of waiting for the food to arrive, you eat the menu instead. That would be crazy, would it not? And yet many people are eating the menu. They're eating the menu instead of waiting and letting the menu lead them to the living waters, to the food that will sustain your very spirit and soul forevermore. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to look at Jesus as someone who is pointing the way, showing us the way to the living waters, to an eternal life, to a way of being that is phenomenal. The science of mind says to think of Jesus as being different from other people is to misunderstand his mission and purpose in life. He was a way shower and proved his way to be a correct one. His method was direct, dynamic, and powerful, yet extremely easy and simple to comprehend. He believed in God and himself as power and as reality. Believing in God within, he was compelled to believe in himself. Here's what's cool about Jesus. There are a lot of spiritual teachings in the world that will show you how to, say you're living in a particular container, and the container, the consciousness is too tight, it's not expanded enough for you. There's lots of spiritual teachings that will teach you how to bust open that container and move into a larger one. But you're still in another container, and eventually that will become too small, too tight, too constricted, and you'll have to bust open that container to find yourself in yet another container. Jesus came here, he was like, look, you guys, I've got the way to get all the way there now. Bust all the containers and let's just dance in what is forever true and real. The total expansion of who you are. That's what he came to offer. He was pointing in the direction of God. He was pointing in the direction of freedom, wholeness, power, presence, which is God. And here's the key, and if you get nothing else this Easter morning, please get this. He was pointing you inward. This was not an external, hey, up in the heavens, over those clouds, over that mountain, and a little bit to the left of that star, you're going to find it. That was not the message. The message was, go inward to find the glory of God. Go inward to discover realms of freedom and a frontier that is so unexplored, vast and glorious, that is actually greater and larger than anything out there. We're pointed inward to discover the glory of God. And that's the journey we take this day. The crucifixion, metaphysically, is not a story of tragedy. It is a story of transformation. Not a tragic story. A transforming story. It is a story of hope. It is a guidance. The crucifixion metaphysically means crossing out. It means crossing out anything that's blocking you from your goodness, your power, and your presence. Crossing out false beliefs. Crossing out things of this world that no longer serve. Crossing out, at some point, all of us, even this body. Laying it down, eliminating it when we are done. And every crossing out, every crucifixion that we move through leads us to a resurrection. It leads us to a new beginning, an awakening, a springtime, a glory. It always opens to greater and greater and greater life. So the story is there's absolutely nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. How did Jesus respond to the crucifixion? Well, let me back up a step. This story that I'm referencing is about our human journey. And it is the story of our humanness melting away so that we can live in our full spiritual essence. The story depicts Jesus in humanness to his spiritual self. I personally think he was an enlightened being, and so the story in some ways doesn't depict it correctly, but that's my personal thing. It doesn't really matter. Let's look at the story from that standpoint. So in the story of his humanness, when it came time for him to face the crucifixion of the Garden of Gethsemane, what did he do? Well, let me ask you what you would do. If someone walked up to you and said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" And you say, "Why?" And, "Well, I need to kill somebody." And you'd be as good as anybody. Would you be available? You'd be like, "No, what? No way. I am not going to do this. Please do not do this." That's what Jesus said, not in those words. He said, "Take this cup away from me." It speaks to that moment, and this is the key point, people. Before we move into a change, a transformation, that's that part of us that's so afraid, it doesn't want to. It says, "Please, God, no." And the thoughts inside in our head say, "Please don't let that person leave. Let's keep this in place." And we freeze and we clutch because we're afraid of the change. No matter how much it's occurring and how often we're told that that's the only thing real that's happening, when it comes our turn to lay down a way of being and move into a greater expansion, there's something inside of us. And the story speaks to it. The story speaks to it, and it says, "Take this cup away." And it's bartering, basically. That's what we're doing. We're saying, "Look, God, if there is any way that we could renegotiate this part of the plan, I'm available." Right? But as the story goes, we know where he lands on the cross, and we know that we too land moving forward because we cannot stop expansion of spirit. And you don't want to. You don't want to ultimately. In the deepest level of your being, you want the resurrection. And that is the same that is true with this master teacher and that which is in the story. So the journey begins. We're going to fast forward a lot. And so he's on the cross. And on the cross it is said that he makes 7 statements. Or it's called the 7 last words. It's what my book is based off of. 4 years ago, I did this talk on these 7 last words, and I had 3 different people randomly say to me, "That should be a book." Isn't that fascinating? And here's the book.